I would like to invite Olivia to do some closing reflections because we're almost at the end of the webinar. I saw a lot of nice discussion as well in the chat after the good panel we've had. So maybe Olivia, you can also take into account some of the questions that have been asked in the chat, and maybe because we have a little bit of time, maybe invites either of the panelists also to reflect on some of the questions as well. But that's up to you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Fiona. So yes, we have a few minutes left. So just to kind of highlight some of the highlights of what's been discussed so far. We had the keynote presentation, we heard from Jana about the state of women's employment and some of the inequalities that exist and the differences in experiences between men and women on a global scale. Some really interesting data that is not surprising because we've heard it historically for years, how fewer women are in employment versus men, but more of them are in part-time work. Women are paid less, they're working fewer hours, but also they're doing different types of work. There's a sex-based occupation segregation in the traditional labour market. So all of this is really important, as we were saying earlier, to take into account when we think about new forms of organising work or new types of work, or just the same type of work that we had before, but mediated through different new actors and new technologies, because some of the work isn't actually that different. And that's how we started the conversation with the panelists. And some of the key takeaways that I take away are, first of all, the complexity of what we're talking about. Not all women have the same experience. Not all women have the same experience in the gig economy, and it needs to be contextualized. They're not a homogenous group. We need to unpick the narratives around empowerment and flexibility. And as Grace put it very nicely, flexibility can be the best and the worst thing about finding work and doing work through platforms. We need more data, we need more research, we need to understand better in quantitative and qualitative terms the different realities across the world when it comes to the gig economy and women's experiences. And we need to look at the design of the technology. So as Uma pointed out, technology is not neutral and it's not gender neutral, and technology is designed by people. And often it's designed by men in certain parts of the world. And so, as we heard in the best practice from Skills CV, there are things one can do when designing processes and technologies, and the way that we set up how the matching works, for example, that can impact tremendously how the workers then experience finding work and doing work and relating to those clients. And we also heard from Anjali the word gamification. Now that's embedded in many platforms beyond the gig economy. It's embedded in social media platforms, it's embedded in video games, etc. And listening to back to the discussion around Skills CV, I was thinking about the asymmetry of power that we often find connected to the asymmetry of information, the information that workers have and the information that clients have at the start of that working relationship. And that can also be a change in the design to make it more symmetrical. So these are some of the key insights that I've gathered listening to the panel and listening to Skills CV. If there are any other questions that you'd like to make in the chat, we have about another 5 minutes that some of our panelists can address these questions. There was a great question about are women using social media networks to connect online? Because as we know, freelance work, whether you're doing it through a platform or not, can be a very isolating experience, and it can feel very isolating. So that was a great question in the chat. Any other questions, feel free to ask them. We've got a few more minutes, and maybe we can have our panelists and Adinda on screen to perhaps just reflect on what Adinda just discussed and presented. And we can have some closing remarks from both Adinda and the panelists. So Grace, Uma. Jana, we can have Jana on screen, of course. Any closing reflections? We've got about 5 minutes. Anybody that would like to say something? Closing remarks?
Okay, I'm happy to go if nobody is.
Go for it.
Okay. I think there were some very nice questions that were coming about saying, how do women get together and organize, and if there are any examples around that. What we have seen is that in different parts of the world, women do get together, and sometimes they also try to ensure that their managers, or suppose if you're talking about location-based platforms and other men who want to get in, who are part of some of these groups, they try to not allow them and to have just women's only group to discuss some of the problems that they face, whether it is relating to the kind of insecurities they are facing when they are doing the job, or the kind of pressures they are getting also from the male members within those jobs. So it's quite interesting to see that happening. But to what extent, or when you're talking about freelance work, where they go about sharing who are the good clients, where there's more work, and how they could share this work if they're overloaded. But these spaces haven't come to a point where it could be utilized for organizing. I think it's slowly coming in. At least in the location-based platforms, you see in taxi riding or ride-hailing in China, it being used. You see it in beauty workers in India being used, where women are coming out and trying to see how these platforms, social media spaces, can be effectively utilized, either to negotiate with the algorithm at times, where they keep signing in and canceling the work so as to ensure that somebody else gets the work. And this is all very coordinated action that they do, which is super interesting to see how to get at the company, or to how to get at the company to change the platform policy. So they are being very innovative in these spaces, but I think we'll have to just see how we can turn this into a space for them to organize. Much more in the location is happening than in the freelance, is what I see.
Thanks, Suma. Anyone else would like to either refer to a question that's been asked, or
I mean, if there's still a bit of time, then from my side, I'd really like to react to what Uma was saying before about algorithms and studying that technology and how inequalities are generated. And I think that's a really promising avenue for further research as well. And from my side, I don't study platforms specifically. So I study what we've called the traditional labor market today. And when we look at inequalities in the labor market, we see workplaces, work organizations, and firms as spaces where inequalities are generated as well, right? Not just replicating inequalities that come in from society as a whole, but actively also negotiating over, bargaining, or claiming resources that are available. For example, who gets those best work shifts, right? Who gets those best positions? Who gets the higher paying jobs? And I think it would be very interesting to see to what extent these kind of mechanisms of inequality generation in those traditional workplaces matches what algorithms are doing in platforms, or potentially what clients are doing in platforms.
Thanks a
Grace?
lot,
Yep.
everybody.
Yep. Okay.
Olivia, do you want to have a final word?
No, I just wanted to invite for final reflection, Grace and Anjali.
Go ahead.
In reflecting on Adinda's presentation and whether some of those could be applied in the world of platform work, and just connecting with what Jana just said about inequalities being generated in the workplace and how to overcome those. So any final remarks from any of them?
If I could just say, I think there's real value if people could get together and organize, and like they do in the traditional labor force. And maybe it's not about how to, who gets the best jobs, but there are strategies in place with platform work, with web-based platform work, on how to maximize your earnings, things that you should or should not do, even like just coming up to a broader understanding, like we will not undercut each other with the payment things. So it would be an incredibly helpful thing. I haven't actually come across any such formal online space for web-based platform workers. Local-based platform workers, oftentimes, like Mexico, for instance, has quite a few organizations that do that, but which are much more formalized. But yeah, this is definitely something that's missing in the labor space for web-based platform work.
Thanks a lot.
Maybe just to add that this came up, women being part of groups online, it came up mostly in the WhatsApp groups where, like for ride hailing, drivers, they give each other information on where they found trouble or what's happening here and there. And then those in the Airbnb business can refer customers because they belong to the same WhatsApp group. If they don't have room, then they can share the contacts of someone else. So I think there's a bit of social capital that women find within some of these groups. But it's something, as Anjali said, something worth exploring a bit more. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Okay, so we come to the end of the webinar, and over to Fiona to, I guess, close it all off.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Olivia, Dinda, Grace, Anjali for coming in last minute. Jana as well, and Uma, big thanks for all of you for sharing your knowledge and your insights. Thanks for everybody for joining in on a late Friday afternoon, night for some people already. And I just wanted to quickly share with everybody that as the WageIndicator Gig team, we, next to our webinars, we tend to produce a lot of content. We write blogs, we have a newsletter that comes out bi-weekly. We just started our podcast series, of which Martijn shared the first initial link already, and there will be more episodes coming up almost, well, very soon. And we recently, on the 1st of March, also launched the Gigpedia website, gigpedia.org, which is a website that we host together with Oxford University, so the Fair Work Project, and the University of Leeds. So please check out the website as well, where we share updates about the economy and including the Fair Work ratings as well. So stay up to date with what we do. If you have any questions about the gig work that we do at WageIndicator or with the other partners, feel free to reach out. Also, if you would like to be in touch with some of the panelists, we can make connections. Like we mentioned, the webinar is recorded and will be online very soon, hopefully even today. And we hope to see you at our next webinar, which will be in October, like we do every year, which will discuss whether or not there is a level playing field in the gig, in the world of gig work. So thanks a lot. Maybe we can have the end screen there, so you can have a direct link to both the podcast as well as the next webinar. Feel free to already register. And thanks a lot for being here today. Have a lovely weekend and rest of your day, and hope to see you very soon at our next webinar or somewhere else. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.